Howdy folks, Rain of Galen here, and welcome to another episode of Rain Makes Stuff. I have been planning this video since I rebooted my channel in October. This was actually intended to be the first make that I shared with you guys, but of course, technical difficulties, just difficulties. I am going to be making this. And be sure to stick around to the end of the video to see who won the perfect amulet I made in the last video. So without further ado, let's start crafting. I'll start with a sketch of Epona to get familiar with her design and to make sure I get her proportions closer than I would otherwise. Despite my better judgment, I'm using hangers again for the armature. See if you can count how many times I got stabbed by the end of this video. Next, I'll bulk out her body with aluminum foil to save money on clay as well as reduce her overall weight. After flattening out some Sculpting original clay, I'll start covering the armature. As I add more and more clay, I'm starting to notice that she's getting a bit wobbly. Of course, that will definitely not come back to haunt me once I put her in the oven. No, definitely won't. While I cope with denial, I'll blend in some rolls of clay to create muscles and skin folds before spending way too much time staring at that beefy badunkadunk. Next, I'll start adding some detail to her hooves, starting with hair. Lots and lots of hair. So much hair.
One eternity later.
Once I finally get her nice and fluffy looking, I'll give her some strong shoulders to hold the legs that just came out of the oven. A bit more clay, a few more folds, and some additional muscle definition here and there, and she's finally on her way to a full set of limbs. Now she just needs a head. I like to use a sharp tool to cut the clay where the mouth goes, then I'll use a tiny clay snake as the nostril before smoothing everything out with a small silicone tool. I'm admittedly not good at eyes, so I'll fudge with the clay for a while before I'm happy with it and move on to giving her some nice sturdy looking cheeks and a strong jawline. Then it's time to add even more fur. Now it's time for ears. For Epona's ears, I'll curl up some triangles, then smooth them onto her head before moving on to some additional hair details on her heels, which is when my camera decided the background was much more interesting than what I was working on. While we're on the subject of hair, I'll make her tail separately, then attach it once it's baked. Yep, those snakes will be strands of hair in the tail, painstakingly added one at a time until the entire tail is covered. Then I'll blend everything together and throw in some additional hair texture with my wire brush before applying some isopropyl alcohol to smooth the lines and remove any unwanted bits of clay. I'm now ready to add some individual hair strands using Fimo Leather Effect clay, which I love for these types of details since it's so flexible and so much harder to break. Now to bake it and add the finished tail to Epona's... Moving on. So much hair. Let's fast forward. Ah, that's better. Now to blend in some smaller pieces for her bangs before deciding you didn't need to see the rest of her hair put into place, and that my shoulder was much more interesting to watch. Apparently I lost some footage of me making Epona's saddle blanket and parts of her saddles, so here's a montage of what I have left. Broke both of her legs.
No! God, please, no!
I'll need to create a very sturdy base if the sculpture is going to stand longer than a few minutes. I'm taping together part of a soda box and some spare pieces of acrylic I had lying around as a cement mold.
2 hours later.
Once it starts to harden, I'll squish Epona's armature wires into the cement and...
24 hours later.
Finally, it's hard enough to remove the supports and mold very, very carefully before using some tacky glue to seal the cracks in her legs. Tacky glue is great for this since it's somewhat flexible, so I'm not too worried that she'll break again. And now, something seems to be missing.
Why has no one found the missing link?
Ah, yes, I suppose it's time to sculpt the man himself. I'm coating the armature in both foil and lightweight clay this time and baking it before I begin adding details with the regular clay, starting with Link's signature saggy boots, complete with massive folds of leather, teeny tiny buckles, and little flappy deals. For Link, I'll apply some alcohol as I go to smooth out any fingerprints before moving on to other areas. While I admire my handiwork, you can admire the back of my head until I'm ready to attach his hand to his little nub and add some glove details. Moving ahead. I'm not the best at making heads, and they almost always end up too big, but they're still pretty fun and satisfying to sculpt.
You wanna know how I got these scars?
I guess I'm okay with how he's coming out so far, but we'll see if his head will end up being too big this time. While we pick Link's nose, let me pick your brains. I'm a huge fan of Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild, but what's your favorite Zelda game so far? Let me know in the comments. Now to give him a couple of long, slender, elfy ears, which I made by cutting out some triangles and smoothing them onto his head. Now that he can hear,
Hey, listen!
I'll attach some tiny jump rings from my jewelry stash so I don't have to sculpt earrings. While his head's in the oven, I'll continue adding details to his body, like the folds and bulges in his tunic. I'll also roll out some super thin sheets of clay to add the edges of his clothing, which I'll blend into his body. Seems like he might need a neck.
Hey!
Now, some more thin pieces of clay for his neckline and his collar, some teeny pieces for his shirt laces, and finally, a large piece for the bottom of his tunic. Speaking of bottoms, I'm getting dangerously close to the bottom of my Sculpey box. I might get one or two more sculptures out of it before I'm totally out, but if you'd like to help support these makes and nerd-tastic videos, check out my Patreon page. I'm working on coming up with some additional perks for you guys to enjoy, so feel free to leave me a comment on that Patreon page with what you'd like to see as a future benefit. I'll put a link to the Patreon at the top of the video as well as in the description to make it easy for you. But don't click on it just yet. Definitely finish the video. It's finally that time! It only took months to get here, but we're finally ready to paint. I'll prime everything in black first, since I really want to accentuate the shadows in the sculpture to mirror the original art. Then I'll start layering in lighter and lighter shades on top, blending each together. By the way, thanks to support from viewers like you, I was finally able to afford better acrylic paints. So this time I'm using brand new Liquitex paints instead of the cheapos. And they're much more vibrant, much easier to blend, and best of all, no paint boogers. So thank you! And a special shout out to Verge, Isaac, and Deranged Band for buying me enough coffees recently to finally afford some real art supplies for this video through my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'll throw a link to that page in the video and description as well while I'm thinking about it. Back to the make, for the top layer on the metal details, I'm mixing Liquitex Medium with my good old Pearl X metallic pigments to make it nice and sparkly. Sparkles, sparkles! A few more details, and we're ready to move on to Link. I'll take the same approach, starting with blocking on the base colors, and then layering lighter tones on top. I'll also do a small amount of dry brushing on the details, but I didn't show that part because, well, I forgot to turn on my camera. Now to give Link his signature green tunic, starting with a deep forest green and moving through lighter shades, just like before. I definitely prefer being able to blend rather than having to rely only on dry brushing, so I have to say I am loving these new paints. I just can't say thanks enough to those of you who've been providing support so far. Now I'll shut up and let you enjoy a painting time-lapse set to this lovely Song of Storms remix. I'll use hot glue to attach his cute little scabbard and shield before moving on to the base, which I'll coat in a mixture of school glue and sand.
It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Before the sand mixture is fully set, I'll add in some chunks of moss that my dog tore out of a ficus in the basement. My original plan was to try out some static grass on the base, but alas, none of the craft stores near me carry it, and it wouldn't have come in on time for this video if I ordered it. So, moss. Since this stuff is a bit unruly, I'll add some drops of watered down Mod Podge to hold it in place. For the sides of the base, I'm finally breaking out the laser cutter that's been collecting dust for the last couple years and cutting out some pieces of cherry plywood to cover the sides of the cement base. After peeling all the masking paper off, I'll attach them to the base with some tacky glue, then use my oversized furniture clamps to hold them in place until the glue sets. Now the final touch, just a drop of UV resin in each eye to give it that glassy look and bring the sculpture to life. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be, so I sometimes will brace my elbow on the table or even in another hand to steady them. But sometimes no amount of bracing is gonna stop every little mistake from happening. And now for the finished sculpture. So there you have it! Link and Epona, super happy with how this came out. And now for the moment you've been waiting for. If you saw my previous video, you know I made the perfect amulet from the Devil May Cry series, and I'll be giving this amulet away today. So our winner for this amulet is, drumroll please, this person. Whoever you are, if this is you, please send me an email to reignofgalen@gmail.com with your address and your actual name so I can mail this lovely amulet to you. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you haven't checked it out already, here's the Patreon that we created recently. where you can provide support and get more involved without your support can't afford really cool craft materials to make really cool stuff. And if you're not ready for that level of commitment, you can buy me a coffee, because I like coffee. Or, if you'd like to see more videos like this, something you might like would be hereish.